KTSM, an iHeart radio station. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. However you're doing so, this is not to say that one is preferred over the other. One of the better ways you can do so with the comments throughout the shows over on the social. But even if you're tuned in terrestrially or in your car, driving safe, I hope, or however you prefer to do so, it is Friday. We have made it through this another hell of a week, and there is so much to break down here. Just what the doctor ordered is absolutely a dose of Free-for-All Friday, which, if you're unfamiliar, does mean we are taking those comments and calls throughout both hours of the show. Pressure relief out for the weekend. Oh boy, has the pressure been building. I mean, you pick a subject, something has probably been going on a little bit nuts with it, particularly as it affects our area, but we will take on any subject here today. So if you want to call in during the show, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. I mean, we got gas prices, we got the Ukraine situation, we got global supply just going nuts. I mean, you pick a category and it has probably been affected in some way, shape, or form, even as we're looking at those near-shoring, those currents, maybe El Paso being in the borderland in general, being better positioned than we might have expected otherwise. Again, there's a reason I keep using the phrase, things are going to keep getting weirder, because there are, unfortunately, given the situation, like you wouldn't want this to be the reason it happened, but some benefits to be reaped for our own section of the country. So all that stuff to kind of break down here. And so, yeah, if you want to chime in with your 2 cents, tell us what's up in your neck of the woods, in your mind, in your world, and let us know what you think about it. There is so much to discuss here. Again, couple of the ones on my mind here from our news partners over at KFOX 14 right now. I was mentioning some about the gas prices starting to creep up or shoot up in some cases. Proof in the pudding, if you want to go see it over on their homepage right now, that near in Las Cruces anyway, near Idaho and El Paseo Road, showing a gas price of $4.99 a gallon for the Sunoco there. And that one of their reporters who went in and got the picture of it, then there was also, it may have been a street sign problem, but that an employee there nearby expected that prices could increase, well, before too long here. I mean, the national average has surged by about 11%. So if you have been following my advice of keeping yourself more or less topped up, you might want to reconsider that, because, again, I've been just personally keeping it a little bit closer to about half a tank before I do the fill-up, to use the usual, for me anyway, quarter or less, just because we got uncertainty in the forecast, in the economic report, in the geopolitical. I mean, uncertainty abounds, and the only way you can really keep yourself locked down is by, well, taking appropriate steps here. But also a question that had come up that I wanted to follow up on at the end of our show yesterday was about those elections. Of course, we've been talking a fair bit about the current results, the runoffs that are, of course, being set up for the end of May, but there were 2 kind of things that people may have been a little bit confused about there that I wanted to lay out for you all, that there were those propositions that were on the Republican primary ballot, not on the Democrat one, because essentially they come down to planks of the Republican Party here in Texas. So no force of law behind them on that partisan ballot, but could very much end up in future legislation. And just to muddle this a little bit more and hopefully not add too much to the election fatigue we absolutely suffer from in our area, you have a constitutional amendment election ordered for May 7th of this year. So we got actually 2 more elections even before the November one coming up here. So hope you're buckled up and know what's coming. We're looking at specifically on May 7th now, a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide for the reduction of the amount of a limitation on the total amount of ad valorem taxes, yada, yada, yada. Basically, that is the one that is saying that you're going to keep property taxes lower, particularly for those in homestead and those kind of situations. And then the second one, constitutional amendment increasing the amount of residence homestead exemption from ad valorem taxation for public school purposes from $25,000 to $40,000. So keeping them low and then increasing the amount that essentially cannot be taxed when done for homestead exemptions here. And that, of course, has been talked about during some of the previous legislative sessions as something that would then be made up from state revenues because sales tax has gone up a bit more. So that is going to be on the ballot. But for those who are at all confused about what the 10 primary ballot propositions were on the Republican side of the ballot, I'll just read through them here real quick. In light of the federal government's refusal to defend the southern border, Texas should immediately deploy the National Guard, Texas military forces, and necessary state law enforcement to seal the border, enforce immigration laws, and deport illegal aliens. Number one. Number two, Texas should eliminate all property taxes within 10 years without implementing a state income tax. Number three, Texans should not lose their jobs, nor should students be penalized for declining a COVID-19 vaccine. Number four, Texas schools should teach students basic knowledge and American exceptionalism and reject critical race theory and other curricula that promote Marxist doctrine and encourage division based on creed, race, or economic status. Number five, Texas should enact a state constitutional amendment to defend the sanctity of innocent human life created in the image of God from fertilization until natural death. Number six, the Republican-controlled Texas legislature should end the practice of awarding committee chairmanship to Democrats. Number seven, Texas should protect the integrity of our elections by verifying the registered voters are American citizens, restoring felony penalties, and enacting civil penalties to vote fraud, and fighting any federal takeover of state elections. Number eight, Texas should ban chemical castration, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and genital mutilation surgery on all minor children for sex transition purposes. Number nine, Texas parents and guardians should have the right to select schools, whether public or private, for their children, and the funding should follow the student. And 10, Texas affirms our freedoms come from God, and the government should have no control over the conscience of individuals. So those were the ballot propositions that were up there if you were voting on that side of the ballot. And as was discussed yesterday, all those ended up passing pretty handily, most of them by 90%, about the only one that was anywhere below that. So that's actually the 2020 ballot propositions. Anyway, those are the ones on this one, and I do believe that they all passed within 80 to 90% of that here. So again, any confusion there? None of these can carry the force of law currently. These are essentially what the party has put out as national planks to put out to the constituency of the Republican Party of Texas saying, hey, do you all support this or how do you feel? So wouldn't be surprised. We've already seen on a lot of these issues some lawsuits, some actions, some court cases, etc., come up on a lot of these propositions and a lot of the concepts within them, but very much possible for the end up in law otherwise. We also have Edgar Ortiz over with us on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. So that was a lot of talking for me, but again, to the point here, we are doing those calls and comments throughout the both hours of the program here. So if you wanted to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Because there's so much to talk about. We'll get more to the Ukraine situation, the supply challenges we're seeing from that, including things even that might be, well, the space race in our area might be seeing a bit of a downturn, depending on how their supplies are locked up, with more action coming out of Russia specifically. All that and more coming up after this break here with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Again, if you want to get your 2 cents in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound before the 54, we had a stalled vehicle that was blocking up those 2 left lanes and causing heavy slowing going back to Schuster. Now that stall has just been cleared, but you can still expect those residual delays to be there. Also watch for a crash on Campbell at Texas Avenue and another collision on Montana Avenue at Rich Bean Boulevard. I'm Wendy Swanson. That's traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Print and Marketing Services help small business print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 3/26. Visit staples.com/signage for details. Staples, the working and learning store.
Fellow Texans, play it safe. Protect yourself and your family with a free COVID-19 vaccination for adults and children. Get your free vaccine at Horizon Fire Department Station Number 2 at 12361 Paseo del Este Boulevard this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. No appointment necessary.
Now may be the perfect time to buy a home financed by Loan Depot. Loan Depot has over 300 loan products to help you make home ownership a reality. Interest rates are near historic lows. Rates will not stay low forever. So call 866-888-LOAN so one of our thousands of loan officers can help you find the right loan. Call 866-888-LOAN or visit loandepot.com. Loan Depot. Rates are subject to change. Equal housing opportunity lender. NMLS number 174457. Licensed in all 50 states.
With people getting in shape for summer, I want to let them know my fitness center is more than treadmills and free weights. So I created a radio ad at iHeartAdBuilder.com to spread the word about our yoga and boot camp classes. Now, my business is as healthy as our members.
A custom radio ad from iHeart Ad Builder is the fast, affordable way to drive customers to your business. Put the power of radio to work for you. Get started now at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
So the dream was to build your very own law practice. Be your own boss, call all the shots. But have things like billing, HR, timekeeping, and all the other management stuff turned your dream into a nightmare? Take charge of your practice with Lexicon. We're the intersection of practice management software and legal support services for your firm. You'll get more billable and livable hours back. Lexicon marks the spot for all your practice management needs. Visit lexiconservices.com/intersection to get the whole story or schedule a demo.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Your host, Andrew J. Polk. You are tuned in to our 2-hour program here today, talking about all the things that affect us in the borderland and beyond, particularly today, because we have made it through this week. Oh, man, these weeks just seem to keep dragging longer, don't they? Because of all the issues going on, all the stuff we're seeing. I mean, you pick a subject. We could do a whole 2-hour show on it, on what is going on and how it's affecting us here. So, to open it up kind of that, we do have those phone lines open. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM, gas prices, general supply. You thought we were seeing some serious supply chain issues already, as we've talked about a lot. It's probably going to get ramped up to 11 here before too long. So I'm just saying, like, if you got 2 cans of bean on your shelf, rectify that, because you'll be happy you did. RJ saying a little bit earlier over on the YouTube that he resembles that remark. And you have to be a little bit more specific, because we got a lot of remarks coming in and expect more here. Again, if you're wanting to add your 2 cents, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Do have a caller on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
It's Dave.
Hey there, Dave. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just want to talk about, it's always brought up, the whole racism issue of on both sides, not both sides, mostly on the Democratic side. What drives me nuts is they had their opportunity to select someone. They had a diverse panel. They had Biden, Buttigieg, an openly gay man, Kamala Harris, a black woman, Andrew Yang, Asian American, a diverse panel, and they defaulted to the white old man. So how can they have a foot to stand on when they say America's racist and Republicans are racist, when they had a chance to prove what they preach? So that drives me nuts. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think even out of people I know for that are avowed Democrats, that there was kind of a, well, last choice and still better than the other choice was the kind of reasoning that came down to it. I mean, it was much touted during the election. I do recall about this being one of the most diverse panels, kind of like you're saying, as we saw during the debates there. But yeah, definitely didn't come down that way here. I guess the way I really think about the way that conversation about, how race relations and how they're even talked about in this country, actually, best example that's come out of it most recently is not even from this country, but just north of the border. Look at the situation that was going on with the trucker convoy in Canada and the way that the issues that were at play there kind of got just totally ignored within those calls of that. So, I mean, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. It clearly does. I mean, I've experienced it myself in my own ways. Most people probably have in some ways, but when you're just only focusing on that and not like necessarily some of the core issues, you're missing the point, and it doesn't work very well at all.
Yeah, that's my point exactly. That if that's kind of like one of their strong legs on that pushback on Republicans or anybody else that thinks different. That how can you say that you had an opportunity? You're saying there's social justice issues going on. You had your chance and you let it go by. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, that's an interesting point there. And I mean, anytime someone is just, playing the woke card saying, oh, well, I mean, I spend way too much time online. I will freely admit this. But some of the arguments I see going on and the way you got people trying to out woke each other, and it becomes this. Well, there's a phrase I want to use that I can't use on air, but let's just say
think the key word would be convenience.
Convenience or navel gazing, but aim a little bit lower, and you'll get the idea that I'm getting at here, because it's not useful, and it's just trying to outdo each other when there's a whole lot more important stuff to be discussed. Again, even within race relations, there are important things to do, but if it's you're not talking about this right, that's when you lose me. Absolutely, almost every time.
And yeah, that's exactly my view also, that it becomes important when they want it to be, and it's just frustrating. But thank you for all you do with the show and giving everybody a voice. We appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. No, thank you for the point in the call there, because particularly on a day like today, it's important to get it all out there. I got a lot of more comments coming in here. Kathy Caudry, Calvin Williams, RJ calling it the Democrat Party of projection. I want to say projection exists a little bit more on either side of the aisle here, but you look at it long enough, you start getting an idea of at least those in charge of any particular level, what's really important to them because of, well, what floats to the top there. So, again, we're taking those calls throughout both hours here today because it is Friday and we have made it through another week and another one to come. Whole lot to talk about. So if you're wanting to call in and add your 2 cents, we'll take on any subject here today. Just keep it clean if you're calling in. We do have the dump delay, but don't want to have to use it too much. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Dovetailing off one of those ballot propositions that got brought up out of the, again, partisan side, Republican side of the ballot. All of those ballot propositions in the primary election just passed. Actually, a point about, drug enforcement, interdiction. I mean, border issues in general always are around, even if they fade into the background sometimes. Email into us just right as we're beginning the show here. CBP officers stopped multiple fentanyl body carrier, multiple. And if I'm looking at this right, at least 3 different instances of people doing it's hard for me to even imagine actually doing this, but the way I'm going to carefully describe this for our radio audience here, stored within their bodies, and then do your own imagination from there, amounts up to nearly half a pound. Jeebus. Anyway, that is still absolutely happening in our area. Some more reports coming in yesterday of 200 some odd direct interdictions of people, not even just presenting themselves at the border, but going further beyond it. And I mean, we've still got these issues going on. Some of the discussion that came out of the, just pre-election trips involving the governor and other candidates, hinting at that a little bit, but I guess whether anything is actually going to hit the road with the rubber when it comes to stuff out of the State of the Union, stuff out of the state level, remains to be seen, because we've still definitely got issues in our area remaining unaddressed when it just comes to staffing, ability to have boots on the ground, dealing with the literal physical issues that would love to see more happening with, but TBD, I guess, the best way to put it here. Getting more calls on the line again. Number to call, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Got a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Yeah, it's East Side.
Hey there, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to say I appreciated the tip about the Pancho Villa Steakhouse that was on the History Channel the other day. That was interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. So, of course, just as a cross-promotional effort here, since you brought it up, that will be the focus of this upcoming weekend's El Paso History Radio Show coming on tomorrow, 10 to noon here on Saturday, with some of the people involved in the production of that episode, and then what I talked about here. So, I mean, yeah, there are, I guess, again, it kind of goes back to a phrase I use, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, even though that was a different circumstance and different revolutions and different armed conflicts. It's just fascinating, the history that comes through our area. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed that. There's a lot of history in El Paso.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and we always keep focusing on it, and we'll keep doing it with that Saturday program here. But, yeah, that show aired on the History Channel. Another just part of that jam-packed Tuesday we had that was along with State of the Union elections, and then that airing in the milieu. I wasn't able to see it. I've seen some clips going by. Seems like it was well, if you're familiar with the show, it's called Beyond Oak Island, and they were focused on Pancho Villa's gold. Fascinating story on its own. They'll break it all down for you. Again, the El Paso History Radio Show, hosted by Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent, airing this Saturday, 10 to noon, right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Some of the behind-the-scenes pictures also done during that. I actually got to go out and go around the stash house in just the aftermath of that, well, the footage that they took, because they really did have a mini backhoe, I guess a bobcat, I don't know the technical phrase for the machine there, but digging up and looking all in holes all over that place. It was a interesting way to see how they came and told that part of El Paso's history.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Do you know if there'll be a part 2 to that on the History Channel?
We'll see. I mean, that, if you want to get real inside baseball with the way that TV production happens like that. And also, I've watched a couple of episodes of that particular program before, and the brilliance of it is that they never really have to find anything. They just tell a good story. So that's up to their prerogative. I would be mildly surprised, but not unpleasantly surprised if there were to be more. But hey, who knows?
All right, Andrew. Thank you, buddy. Take care.
I appreciate it. No, thanks for the point in the call. Hey, we have put it out there as we'll take on any subject today. And, well, this is absolutely a subject that we can talk about. Yeah, a lot more comments coming in here. John Brazelton, Calvin Williams, Catherine Codry, and more. Edgar Ortiz a little bit earlier. More calls in the line here. Again, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Got a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Hi, Andrew. This is Mary from the West Side. How are you today?
Doing all right, Mary. What's on your mind?
Hi. First of all, thanks for taking the call, of course. Real quickly, just want to express my disappointment. You know, my guy didn't win, but I'm glad to see that Abbott had a strong showing. I want to say to Mark and Joe from last Friday, no, I will not be voting for Robert Francis O'Rourke. So I want, I don't want them to be thinking that I was a plant for O'Rourke when I was advocating for Alan West.
Sure.
But one of my questions, and I'm glad I got through to you, is when I was voting, I did have a question about that one proposition. You just went over them.
Right.
I think it was the third to the last, the one that says about the banning chemical castration.
Yes, number 8 here. Texas should ban chemical castration, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and genital mutilation surgery on all minor children for sex transition purposes. That was the one on there. And again, I believe, I don't have the total latest numbers up here. They got the 2020 results, but not the 2022 from the Texas Secretary of State. But I'm not aware of any of them on these propositions that did not pass, again, with the Republican voting base.
Well, see, to me, that's a trick question. So that's why I'm glad I got to talk to you today. Maybe you can explain it to me, and maybe some people in the audience have a question on it too. When they say, should Texas ban chemical castration, does that mean that we're against the chemical castration of like sex offenders? And when it says child mutilation, should Texas ban child mutilation? So when you vote for it, are you saying you want chemical castration? I'm thinking more along sex. I know that makes a lot of people's hair go up, but I'm thinking more about along the line for sex offenders and things like that. And do you want child genital mutilation, or if you vote against it, it's that you don't want it?
So, I mean, yeah, this gets pretty thorny really quick. And I'll admit, I'm one of those people myself that is like, oh boy, get your 10-foot poles here because that's about as close as I want to get to that. But okay, the way my reading of it and leading up to this, my understanding is that they were pretty specific that all of these phrases then subordinate to the idea for sex transition purposes, because wrapped up in here, kind of like you're bringing up, there could absolutely be the idea of sex offenders that have that as a court-ordered treatment for it, or even, I mean, you can even technically get into religious practices here if you're talking about things like, what is done within the Jewish community. So it could, I mean, even thornier here. So with that final clause there, to my reading, I think this all then goes towards, well, frankly, what came right before the election coming out of both the Attorney General's office and the governor's office when it came to the investigations going on. In fact, an article over on our website right now, KTSMradio.com, Paxton appeals block of investigation into trans teens family.
Yeah.
That is primarily what all of this appears to go towards. And again, just to make it clear, none of this has force of law. It did pass as a proposition, but it does not then go on into law. It's essentially a party plank for the Republican Party in Texas going forward until, the next statement of purpose.
Well, I'm concerned because I voted against it. Because the way I read it is, it should Texas ban chemical castration. So I thought they're saying let's ban the action, which means that then you cannot do chemical castration. So I don't know if I misread it, and I understand that we're not actually voting for it to become a law. We're just saying if we're for it or against it.
I mean, I can understand your position on there. Again, to give me a 12-foot, 13-foot pole, frankly, with this one, because it's messy and it gets into a lot of very personal. And then, I mean, depending on how you read it, I could agree with you that could be that kind of an interpretation. So I guess the rubber really hitting the road moment for this will be if it comes up in further legislation. As it stands right now, but the only way I'm aware of any reasonable implementation happening is of that opinion out of the AG's office, and then the enforcement that has been looked at both from them and out of Governor Greg Abbott's office, which are tied up in the courts themselves right now. So it's a possibility, and I think there's a lot of debate to be had about it, certainly.
I just want to be clear. I am for chemical castration. I'm talking about sex offenders, child abusers, things like that. I think that's a remedy because they keep getting incarcerated, and then once they get put back out in the public, they go back and they offend again. So I'm thinking that might be some type of remedy. So maybe somebody in the audience can explain it better. But I was really confused on that one, and I'm afraid I probably voted the wrong way.
Potentially, but again,
I didn't understand it.
If anything really comes up about it, it will be coming up even more in law here. Again, we got just to lay it out. We do have a constitutional election coming up in early May now that focuses primarily on school taxing and homestead exemptions. So that's the next real actionable item that'll be coming up here. And if anything else comes up on this, when it's something you and I can vote for outside of our representatives anyway, we'll certainly be talking about it more.
All right, Andrew. Well, thank you. I don't want to take up any more time, but I hope everybody has a nice weekend. And let's go, Republicans. Now we got to get out, put our shoulder to the grind, and we got to get Irene Armendariz over the line.
Yes, and as a good plug there, that she'll be one of the candidates we are going to, or nominee, I guess now, technically, we will be talking to next week, as we have just now gotten outside of the smoke and dust out of this election. We'll be talking more about those other non-competitive races because she got essentially a pass-through. So we'll be talking with her and more along those lines. So stay tuned there. Thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it here. All right, we are overdue for that next break already, but coming out of the break, we'll get to more calls on the line. We've got a lot more comments coming in here as well. So we'll talk about all that. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Justin Creed, your CBS 4 News Update. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham visited Las Cruces yesterday with the promise of more money for those affected by the La Union floods. $1.5 million in state Emergency funding will go to Doñana County to complete the purchase agreement with the most dramatically affected families in La Union. Another $3.4 million will go towards the Gardner Dam, not the Alvarez Dam. That was the cause of the current flood problems. The governor's visit gave some people relief knowing more help is on the way, with other residents were left unsatisfied. The El Paso Fire Training Academy is preparing its newest class of cadets. Men and women from Class 100 trained both physically and mentally to become firefighters. After 7 months of training, the cadets will graduate and work alongside veteran firefighters. The Academy's next class of cadets is now open and taking applications. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
That earlier stall is cleared. I-10 eastbound approaching the Patriot Freeway, so that's good news. But you do have a collision. Gateway southbound right around Woodrow Bean Trans Mountain. You can try Fairbanks or Kenworthy to avoid delays. Montana eastbound at Rich Beam dealing with a crash and a wreck on Campbell. This one right around Texas Avenue. I'm Ryan Levine, keeping an eye on your roadways.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. The first of a series of systems has come through for your Friday, giving us some fairly gusty winds and some patchy blowing dust. Now, Saturday's winds will still be windy, just not as strong, but without the rain, we'll continue to see some of that wind lift the dust. So more patchy blowing dust remains in the forecast your Saturday, with another system coming in on Sunday, bringing back even stronger winds and more dust.
This report is sponsored by Brakemasters.
Before your day is done, Brakemasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brakemasters shape. Download coupons at Brakemasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brakemasters. We give you an honest break. Who can you trust in big media? A recent study finds Americans don't trust big media, and 65% of Republicans don't trust them at all. Now, Newsmax has become a trusted source for millions. They go to Newsmax.com for breaking news and watch Newsmax TV for the latest from Washington, New York, Hollywood, and the world. Download the free Newsmax app on your smartphone and watch it anytime, anywhere. Nielsen recently reported that almost 7 million cable viewers watch Newsmax, but not Fox News. Americans really are making the switch to Newsmax. Start every day with Wake Up America and Rob Finnerty. And watch the Newsmax team at night with Eric Bowling, Sean Spicer and Lindsey Keith, Greg Kelly, Stinchfield, Jim Pellegrino, Rob Schmidt, and more. Every weekend, tune in for Huckabee, Diamond and Silk, Dick Morris, Wendy Bell, and more. Already 20 million made the switch and watch Newsmax all the time. Try it. You may never go back.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
On dark, foggy roads, do your fog lights provide the visibility you need? Upgrade to LEDs from Sylvania, the leader in automotive lighting. Experience how advanced optical design leads to superior down-road clarity. Visit the Sylvania website to find your LED bulbs today. This report is sponsored by Sylvania.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. Do not want to neglect our terrestrial radio, folks, those listening in your cars, off of your, traditional radios, or any of that. But we've got a lot of ways you can interact with the show, particularly on a day like today, Friday, and do another week. And we have got those calls. So if you're wanting to call in, chime in that way, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of comments coming in. Maria Kalman is posting about her 2 cents about chemical castration. You know, I'm never totally prepared for what we're going to get into on a day like today, but we always got to roll with it, so we'll get into that more here. Calvin Williams asking, where can I find the homestead proposal/regulations over in the Texas Secretary of State site? Just want to do that in your favorite search engine. You can find out what is coming up for the constitutional amendment election for May 7th, 2022. coming up here in the next couple of months. So we got Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. There's a little bit more detail on it. So if you want to find out more about that, also votetexas.gov can give you a little bit more detail there. Also some commentary coming on about, casual racism essentially here. And John Browson saying the major form of racism he experiences in El Paso in the doctor's waiting room, no matter what the time of your appointment is. If an Anglo name, you'll be called last. Not my experience personally, and this kind of maybe comes down to a larger conversation we've had about knowing and trusting your doctor, among other things. Calvin Williams saying something similar here, not his experience. Weighted turn, third and third to be seen here. Another question coming in here also from Lorenzo Colon. Can you talk about the proposition questions? This one, Texas should eliminate all property taxes within 10 years without implementing a state income tax. So again, talking there about the partisan propositions that were on the Republican Party primary ballot that, again, just to clarify, because it keeps coming up, do not have force of law, but essentially raise their prominence within the party platform here. So on that item, actually a good resource over at texasgop.org on their replace property tax idea. Essentially what it comes down to is the concept that, they don't like taxes in general, big surprise, but more accurately that they think that it's just going to read directly from the page here. The problem, property tax is the worst, most immoral method of taxation levied on Texans. Just that kind of subtle statement of their opinion of it here. And then going further into the solution, fully remove the property tax and that the legislature will choose the method to replace that funding, but it must be approved by voters. And finally, the other method cannot be an income tax. So this kind of dovetails off of what we're seeing with the constitutional amendments election that is going to be coming up. Again, let's keep this straight here. We have the propositions. Those are voted on. We've got 2 constitutional amendments when it comes to, taxation on your property when it goes to school districts. What we're already seeing there, essentially what is going to be done is that the state is going to make up that funding so that there should not, again, keyword should, not be any shortfalls for local districts, etc., because that will then be made up from state level revenues on things like, licensings, sales tax, those non-property tax type of revenues. So I guess that whole plank then of those ballot propositions that were on the Republican Party ballot essentially says, let's then make that permanent. James Dickey, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, quoted on that page as well from texasgop.org, saying property taxes create a crushing burden on Texans and preclude true property ownership. Look forward to seeing Texans adopt a more equitable consumption tax as a replacement for the property tax. So essentially, it's what you use and not what you have. So if you're using roadways, getting your registration, buying things in Texas, those kind of things might be where that would come down. But there's also a whole lot that could happen in between there and then in terms of how that actually gets implemented. We've got probably another legislative session to go before we see any movement on that here. And just as a side note, when it comes to some of these issues involving sex offenders and child molesters, getting a little bit spicy in the comments here. Just careful for your own accounts is all I'm going to say here. And you can go check those out for yourselves. They're over on our social media. But as I've been saying, we got those calls on the line. If you wanted to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Got a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Hey, Andrew, this is Raul.
Hey there, Raul.
When I asked you to give me one of Trump's enduring policy successes, you mentioned immigration. Well, the way this resident of the border sees it, someone who has lived here for most of his life, someone who has visited Mexico to see family, friends, and have fun, someone who has studied Mexican and U.S. history and relations between U.S. government and Latin American countries. This is the way I see it. Trump did not have an enduring policy success in solving the endemic and systemic illegal immigration problem. Trump did not round up and deport the 11 million illegals working in the United States like he promised he said he would. He did not build much of a new wall, and Mexico did not pay for the little wall that was built like he said they would. Do you think that Trump's running for the Republican nomination for the presidency?
I would be very surprised if he didn't. I mean, okay, everything that's going to be leading up until essentially, 2024 is going to be focused on fundraising. That's just the way it works these days. So I don't think that we'll see a definitive answer, probably one way or the other. It seems like he kind of personally likes a little bit of ambiguity. If that's my, little bit of personality analysis I may be allowed to do. But I think he's going to keep doing what we're seeing doing the essentially keeping up the rallies that we've seen in some format or another, and keeping then pushing the fundraising scheme, because among other things, that's the way that he's most useful to the existing elected members and officials within the Republican Party. So I fully expect that to keep a pace here. But to go back to your first point there about how he actually had policy successes, or whether or not you're disagreeing with her, obviously, I mean, the major policies that have been in place even under this administration, the Biden administration, have been lukewarm holdovers of Trump administration era policies, or even ones that they've been quote unquote forced to put back into place when it comes to, well, Title 42 was kind of the last holdover, and now the whole migrant protection protocols, MPP, so-called remain in Mexico policies that they are again quote unquote forced to take back. But I get the sense that maybe they're not, at least deep down in the places they don't talk about at parties, that unhappy about, because now they kind of get the best of both worlds out of it, the officials in this administration, being able to say that, oh, well, we didn't want to do it, but now we have to, so I guess we just got to go forward with it, because there really hasn't been that much more of a plan, even from the State of the Union. Would have loved to see more about actual immigration reform, talked a bit about security, talked a bit about, streamlining the system, but I guess there was a lot crammed into there, and hopefully something actually comes out of it, because I'm dubious about what it is. But to your point about the building of the wall, my contention is that no, there was not paying for the physical building of the wall, but essentially the Trump administration did effectuate the building of essentially a virtual wall by the Mexican authorities in the entire revamping and reactivation of the Guardia Nacional, the Mexican National Guard, into becoming a border security force, which essentially did not exist before, and everything going on then on just south of our border here, and even on their border with Central and South America, Guatemala, all those areas, was not something particularly present before the Trump administration, you have to admit.
Hey, do you think that he can win the Republican nomination if he wants it?
I mean, I think that it's essentially at this point his game to lose. I mean, there have been some people, other callers, that have brought up about their concern, discontent, ideas about it. It'll be one hell of a debate process. I mean, it was one hell of a thing to watch back in 2016 as it was, and we're going to see a rerun of that in 2024, or the lead up 2023, I guess, technically, in the lead up to it. Going to be a hell of a ride. And I mean, the question has come up, and I feel like there's a decent amount of debate to be had. Is it possible to consider yourself a Republican in this day and age without being kind of almost de facto a Trump supporter? And the answer, more often than not, seems to come up as maybe at best, and oftentimes more often than not, no. A lot of comments coming in, so thank you for the point in the call there. Do appreciate it. We got a lot of comments coming up here, and we got to take that next break right now, because we'll get to more of the calls and such on the line here. So if you're tuned in, you're all locked into Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. If you're on the line, stay there. If you want to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We've got a few problems on our surface streets, including an accident on Montwood eastbound at Joe Battle Boulevard, also a collision on Paisano Drive eastbound at Oregon Street, and we're dealing with another crash on Montana Avenue eastbound at Rich Beam Boulevard. A medical emergency is reported on Fred Wilson Boulevard westbound at Dyer. I'm Wendy Swanson, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Discover. If you're a valued customer, you deserve a simple gesture of appreciation from your credit card company. And that's why Discover matches all of the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Discover. Exceptionally common sense. Learn more at discover.com/match. Limitations apply.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
I'm KTSM 9 News anchor Natasha Paloma. Well, here at KTSM, many of us were born and raised here, and people should care about local news because these are issues that affect you and me. It's what we feel. It's real, and it affects us right here where we live. We are the borderland, and that translates to our culture, our heritage, and to stories that you won't find anywhere else. That's how we get to the heart of the story, and that's why we put local first.
KTSM 9 News, putting local first.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. It sure feels good to step into a warm car after letting it heat up for a few minutes. However, this practice wastes gas, increases emissions, and pollutes the air. Limit idling your car to no more than 3 minutes to save money at the gas station and improve air quality. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Fellow Texans, play it safe. Protect yourself and your family with a free COVID-19 vaccination for adults and children. Get your free vaccine at Horizon Fire Department Station Number 2 at 12361 Paseo del Este Boulevard this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. No appointment necessary.
My new cafe is always packed at lunch. Thing is, we need a dinner rush to keep up with expenses. So I whipped up my own radio campaign at iHeartAdBuilder.com to advertise our weekly specials. Now dinner reservations are booked weeks in advance, and things are really cooking.
A custom radio ad from iHeart Ad Builder is the fast, affordable way to drive customers to your business. Put the power of radio to work for you. Get started now at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
Sometimes it feels like the course keeps changing right before your eyes. Dell Technologies advisors have the Windows PC and tech solutions you need to help your business stay ahead of the game. Call an advisor today at 877-ASK-DELL. A start to a simpler experience with Windows 11 Pro.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can interact with the show here. Short timing at this here segment, but if you want to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Talking about a lot of stuff here today, a whole lot to get into, so we'll take on any subject here today. Just keep it clean if you're calling in. A lot of comments coming in as well, Catherine Cordry, with some pushback on some of the talking points here, particularly about the accomplishments of Joe Biden and his 49 years in politics. We have a comment commenting here as well. John Browston making a point that Democratic friends scared to death that Trump will run and win again. It would certainly, well, I'm in it for the chaos when it comes to elections, so I might not be the best one to talk about. I just love covering them, talking about them, and the weirder they get, they give us the more to talk about. So I have a strange standpoint there, so maybe disregard me. But Flaco Jimenez actually on the whole income tax and property tax debate. Interesting point here says that he lived in New Mexico, which has a state income tax. The property taxes were very low, however, and even the sales tax is a little less than in Texas. It's basically a wash. They're going to get you either way here. I mean, I've had people that have talked to me about, okay, where should we live and where should we work? Should we live in New Mexico and file taxes here, or should we live in Texas and or vice versa? And I mean, I think the ideal way, if you could figure out how to do it, would be to live in New Mexico, pay the property taxes there, and then do income taxes in Texas. But I am not a tax attorney. I'm not an accountant. And if that violates any laws, then disregard everything I just said, because you don't want to have a good time in a serious federal pen there. So a lot of conversations going on there. I think we got time for one quick call before we hit this next break. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon. I was reading today from Bloomberg magazine or Bloomberg News that it is expected next week that that oil could go up to $165 a barrel.
There have been some of those projections there. I'll believe it when I see it. But again, the advice I've been giving out just on the personal level is fill up at half a tank to keep the pain from being ratcheted up that far anyway. But I mean, we have a whole lot of uncertainty in this whole system. I mean, with us not having the full domestic production, whether or not we could also meet domestic production needs and domestic consumption needs versus what we're also now promising to go into the European energy sector here is a whole nother kettle of fish here. But again, the phrase I keep coming back to is things are going to get weirder. So keep yourself buttoned up as best as possible is the best advice I can give.
Well, it's only going to get worse. And I'll tell you this much. I'm even going out this weekend and buying a scooter. Believe me. Yes. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to point out, a couple other things I wanted to point out. Did you read in the internet today that Scottsdale, Arizona manufacturer of ammunition, I believe it's called Ammo Inc., is pledging to donate 1 million rounds of ammunition to the Ukraine.
I had seen that go by. Yep. And I've also seen on similarly, actually, of all the places, a New York, I think, state house member or maybe a congressional representative doing a gun drive to send over to Ukraine as well. So I find myself encouraged by those kind of efforts, even if they're coming from places you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be originating from.
True, but I seriously don't think that it would be approved by Blinken's State Department.
Yeah, there were some questions that came up about the form and formulations and what it takes to, well, make that actually be legal, because there are things like ITAR and all those fun import-export restrictions that might come into play here. But at least the thinking, I don't know, maybe there should be sending them directly, the donations directly to Sweden for their donation of actual, tactical arms and such. But hey, if you're doing your donations overseas, it behooves you to do your due diligence, making sure you're actually donating to something that will do what they say and not just, lining their own pockets here. So I'm not doing any of that myself here, but hey, more power to you if you want to.
Right. Well, they still have to get past the Neutrality Act.
Mhm.
Well, also in reference to Mary, from the West Side, one of her questions that she asked. Well, look, concerning chemical castration, there is a Texas law that came into effect in 1997. Okay, chemical castration is completely voluntary, whether if you're a sex offender.
Right.
Plus, you must have 2 convictions before you can even volunteer for it. It cannot be mandated by any court. Even regular orchiectomies are not permitted. They for sex offenders. It's prohibited by law. But chemical castration is voluntary, and like I said, you have to meet certain criteria.
Interesting. I'll be perfectly honest. I've not delved that much. I mean, I've dealt with some of the halfway houses in our area and the issues that come along with enforcement of it. I never delved quite that deep into, chemical castration and what comes with it here. Always surprised by the way the conversation goes here, but thank you for the information. Do appreciate it.
Well, no problem. Let's say I've had extensive experience in the field also of community supervision, which is known as probation. Having worked with them for many years as part of my career. But anyway, you have a good evening and a good weekend.
Oh, no, appreciate it. Appreciate the points of the call there. You have one as well. Always interesting conversations here on the show here. We are due for that top of the hour break here. So again, thank you for the point in the call. If you're wanting to call in, the number to do so or comment here, the number 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. More over on the social and a whole lot more coming up after this break. See you at the top of the hour news here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We've got a few problems on our surface streets, including an accident on Montwood eastbound at Joe Battle Boulevard, also a collision on Paisano Drive eastbound at Oregon Street, and we're dealing with another crash on Montana Avenue eastbound at Rich Beam Boulevard. A medical emergency is reported on Fred Wilson Boulevard westbound at Dyer. I'm Wendy Swanson, El Paso traffic.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The immediate crisis is over after Europe's largest nuclear power plant caught on fire amid a battle between Russia and Ukraine. That's what a senior U.S. Department of Energy official told CNN. They said the sensors around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant showed no signs of radiation leakage. This comes as the power plant in southern Ukraine is under Russian control after overnight fighting. President Biden is praising the united transatlantic response to the Russian invasion.
We agree it's not only an attack on Ukraine, it's an attack on the security of Europe and on the global peace and stability.
During a White House meeting with the president of Finland, Biden called it unjustified aggression. Vice President Harris is going to Poland and Romania next week. A statement from her deputy press secretary said her visit will demonstrate strength and unity of the NATO alliance and the U.S. support for NATO's eastern flank allies as Russia invades Ukraine. The U.S. Supreme Court is reinstating the death penalty for the Boston Marathon bomber. That reverses a lower court order involving Johar Tsarnaev. He was convicted of detonating 2 pressure cooker bombs near the finish line of the race in 2013, killing 3 people and injuring hundreds of others. The U.S. Labor Secretary says the latest jobs report shows the labor market is strong.
We saw gains. This month was really unique because we saw a good job gain across all sectors.
It was revealed that 678,000 new jobs were added last month, and the unemployment rate fell to 3.8%. One particular area that saw significant growth was the hospitality industry. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh said the department has met with restaurant groups to discuss how they can help with training and workforce development. At the closing bell, the Dow lost 179 points to 33,614. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A judge is ordering FBI agents testifying in the trial of the men accused of wanting to kidnap Michigan's governor to use their real names. Prosecutors had urged the judge to allow them to use fake names in order to protect the agent's safety. However, the judge said fairness demands the agents use their real identities during the trial. The San Diego, California police officer stabbed during an attempted eviction yesterday has now been released from the hospital, and investigators say a 47-year-old woman was shot and killed for attacking him.
The officer was stabbed with a large chef's knife just above his protective vest, and San Diego Police Chief David Nislight says he's now recovering.
I want to thank the paramedics and the physicians at UCSD who treated this officer, and I'm happy to report that the officer has already been released from the hospital.
The officer was stabbed after sheriff's deputies called for backup during the eviction of the woman in Little Italy. They said she was armed with a knife and had threatened a worker at the condo complex the day before. After 45 minutes of trying to get her to come out, the officer entered with a police dog and was stabbed, leading another officer and 3 deputies to shoot at the woman, hitting and killing her. I'm Jack Cronin.
Low-income Oregonians who worked during the first year of the pandemic could be receiving a check from the state. Michael Kastner explains.
250,000 Oregonians would get checks for $600 under a bill that passed the legislature. One-time payments would go to low-income households with members who worked during the first year of the COVID-19 public health emergency. Only taxpayers who qualified for and claimed the earned income tax credit on their 2020 income tax returns are eligible to receive the payments.
A restaurant in China is giving diners a record-setting view. Recently, Guinness World Records recognized Heavenly Gin as the world's highest restaurant. The eating establishment is located on the 120th floor of Shanghai Tower, which places the restaurant 1,825 feet from the ground. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Al-Anon Family Groups.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism can affect any family. Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else's drinking? Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
Fellow Texans, play it safe. Protect yourself and your family with a free COVID-19 vaccination for adults and children. Get your free vaccine at Horizon Fire Department Station Number 2 at 12361 Paseo del Este Boulevard this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. No appointment necessary.
Hey, this is John Hope Bryant, entrepreneur and fellow builder, just like you. Thanks to the help of iHeartRadio and Prudential Financial, I'd like to present to you my brand new podcast, Building the Good Life. where each week a special friend and I will break down and unveil the mysteries of how you build. So if you're ready to build like you've never thought you could before, the best version of you, make sure to listen every Friday on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
Recording artist Kevin Fowler.
Well, I love the sound of fast boats racing, rooster tails are flying high. Love to hear all my riding friends rocking, howling at the full moonlight. Love to see those fireflies buzzing, lighting up the southern sky. Yeah, I'm a hell-bent 100% Texan till I die. Like lots of 100% Texans, I love having a good time on the water. But remember, nobody's waterproof. Play it safe. Wear a life jacket and designate a driver for the boat and for a safe ride home. Follow these tips and there'll be a lot more days for you to play in this great state of Texas. Nobody's waterproof, yeah, that's a helmet truth, and you know it ain't no lie.
Sponsored by Texas Parks and Wildlife.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM, and your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages where we do this whole full video streaming thing we got going on, if you're into that kind of thing, plus the comments that come along with it, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. Whole lot of ways to add your 2 cents, particularly on a day like today when we have managed to make it through another week. I keep wondering if that's going to not be the case anymore, but we keep muddling through, particularly in my case. Still getting over that cough and cold. We'll be better with it, so pardon any stray mouth noise for me. Trying to get over it. Got the jug of tea going on here, but we will persevere and continue on talking about the things that affect us here in the borderland and beyond, because on a day like today, Free for All Friday, we are taking those comments and calls on all subjects, taking on them all. Just keep it clean if you're calling in. The number to do so there, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Plus a lot of comments coming in over in the social. Lorenzo Colon saying, thank you for what you do, Andrew. I'm happy to be here and just having this conversation because there is not enough conversation being happening about the things that we have going on here. Maria commented a little bit earlier on illegal immigration. We're talking about 150 individuals from 150 countries, have crossed the border. Administration perceives this influx as potential voters. D.C. intends to send aid to Ukraine as a result of the Russia entering the Ukraine. The U.S. also deserves maintained border with security. I mean, that was even a point out of the State of the Union address. Whether you buy it or not is entirely your prerogative, but saying that we need to have borders and we need to have security there, would love to see that being put into place, particularly when you get down to, just particular issues in our area, the gap, I guess, in between the actual physical barriers when you're looking over there at the, Cristo Rey area. It's really what it comes down to. And that can't obviously be solved by even state-level initiatives because, we have the state-level building happening pretty much in the Rio Grande Valley, far south of here and southeast of here, and then pretty much all of that falls in New Mexico. And sure, there is plenty of, you can just see it driving along I-10 if you head down over that area. A lot of security forces, the helicopters that go by. But if you're really wanting to address infrastructure, putting more sensors, more things on the ground, and ultimately beefing up the actual manpower, there's almost no other substitute for, even beyond physical barriers, is my contention here. Something you can definitely see in our area. But okay, just to bring up a couple other of impacts that we're looking at that Ukraine situation. I was one of the many people watching the live streams of the live shelling going on of that nuclear plant in Ukraine yesterday, which is just nuts here. But some estimates vary that we could be seeing a lot more food instability across the world. Maybe not as much here in the U.S., but it's estimated that Russia and the Ukraine supply for some countries within the region up to 70% of their wheat supplies. So that obviously going to have probably some kind of downstream even out here as more demand goes up, more interest chasing fewer products. But even one direct impact that is being looked at is a cutoff of Russian-made rocket engines to the U.S. The actual Russian corporation Roscosmos saying that they are, in response to global sanctions, no longer selling rocket engines to the U.S. So aside from ticking off Elon Musk, Blue Origin, and maybe the guys up there with Virgin Galactic, it's not clear how much of an impact this will really have. But, well, things just, again, keep getting weirder is the best way I can put it here. But let's get to more of those calls in the line again. The number to call there is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We have a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Ben on the east side.
Hey there, Ben. What's on your mind?
Just one, I'm hoping that the military individual that called yesterday will be listening to this and have an answer for me. I just wonder about whether or not it was wise to go into a war with Russia when we're at a disadvantage with our oil, the fertilizers, the rare earth minerals that we depend upon from Russia. That we are, our electric grid is totally vulnerable to attack. We have not done anything to shore up our electric grid in the last 20 years. And they have a way to deliver a payload of nuclear destruction to the United States via hypersonic missiles that the United States does not have. And that has had to do with something else I'd like to ask. And that's the next time you talk to Raul, ask him who if we're not going to vote for Trump, and I'm not necessarily going to vote for Trump either, if we're not going to, who on the Democratic side is he going to vote for? Now, I have a feeling he's going to say Hillary Clinton. And that goes back to my question about the hypersonic missile. Have you ever heard of a project called Skolkovo?
Not that particularly, but I'm familiar with the concept of hypersonic missiles. And I just got to say that given the bluster that we often see coming out of, well, essentially the Pravda, out of any official Russian source there, I'm more than a little bit dubious. I buy it a little bit more on the Chinese side of development there, but whether there are ever actually any actionable and usable platforms for hypersonic capacity, we're talking like Mach 5 and above, so even beyond speeds that you could be seeing from, you know, the more traditional idea of ICBMs. And so, I mean, the applications vary, but if they actually have it or not, I mean, they've been talking about some fanciful technology, including hypercavitation, underwater missiles that could work potentially, theoretically. Whether they actually have them or not, and whether I believe them when they say they have them, is another matter entirely.
Okay, look up Skolkovo, okay? It's a project that the Clinton Foundation funded, and what it was is to develop a Simi Valley type of area in Russia to develop that was used to develop this hypersonic missile that they have. That's out of the Wall Street Journal. Okay, now so I mean, look up Skolkovo.
Okay, I think I'm seeing it here. Yeah,
and that would be something I would like to ask Raul. If it's not Clinton, because she actually was a that's treason. So who else is he going to vote for on the Democratic side? Kamala Harris?
I mean, the whole vice president to president pipeline, if you want to go with that kind of analysis, exists, but it's not exactly a smooth transition for the most part. See the last, Democratic candidate outside of Biden that tried to make that transition. I would be very surprised at this point, just analysis of candidates and viability of fields, that unless there was just a whole lot of unwillingness to run for us to really see HRC coming back onto the scene in any serious way, after, well, essentially 2016. I mean, there hasn't been quite enough change within the Democratic Party itself and how it deals with its elections to, I think, remove the level of concern that the rank and file voter of that persuasion would probably have about how that, I mean, essentially, in my reading and my analysis and my thinking of it, it was less a election, less a primary, as it was waiting on a coronation, essentially, when it came to the final nomination of Hillary Rodham Clinton. So if that were to be moved back into, I'd have to pick my jaw up on the floor a little bit that we're doing this again. So maybe if that is the preferred, I mean, we'll put the question out there, absolutely, to those that you're addressing here, but I would be very, so that would not be the money I'd be betting on that being even a front runner, if a candidate at all for this next round here. I mean, that's my analysis anyway.
That's who they're putting up right now as the candidate for the 2024 election. They're putting up Hillary Clinton up again. Now, it could be somebody else they might go with, but I just ask Raul, who else are you going to come up with? Except, and it could, I guess it could be Barack Obama's, wife. It could come up with that, I guess. But therefore you could have her being the president and him being the first lady, I guess.
I mean, the analysis is going to continue on right up until we hit the election day there. So I'll be curious to see how it actually ends up in. But fair question put out there of those potentials out there. Who would any likely Democratic voters support there? So, all right, we'll put it out there. Thank you for the point in the call. I do appreciate it.
Okay, look up Skokovo.
Got it here. I'll have to look further into it, and we'll definitely want to talk more about that here.
Not too many people know anything about Skokovo.
Yeah, have to look up it up there.
People that have listened to Dan Bongino for years.
Of course, yeah. Do believe I've heard him talk about it. But all right, well, thank you for the point in the call there. Do appreciate it. We are on the cusp of a next break being needed here. But again, we are taking those calls throughout the rest of this hour here. So if you're wanting to do so, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We got more subjects that you can shake a stick at going on, but we'll do our best to make it through our way, as we do here on Fridays, Free for All Friday, taking on all those subjects. So again, 915-544-5876. 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We've got a problem on the I-10 westbound at Las Mochis. It's closed due to a serious collision, and there's heavy traffic going back to Trade Center. All traffic's being forced to exit at Trans Mountain Exit 6. Also, watch for a crash being reported on the Loop 375 eastbound at Wrestler. And we have a medical emergency on Fred Wilson westbound west of Dyer. That's traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Ad Council. Okay, dads, it's time to do the Cabbage Patch, the Running Man, or something more contemporary, the Floss. Dance like a dad. Learn more at fatherhood.gov. Sponsored by the Ad Council.
A nefarious murder plot, a jealous brother, and the most secretive nation on the planet. Big Brother, North Korea's Forgotten Prince, is the podcast that dives into the motives behind the 2017 assassination of the oldest son of North Korea's first dictator, Kim Jong-il.
In North Korea, as in the mob, it's business. It's not personal. When somebody challenges you, that challenger must be eliminated.
Listen to Big Brother North Korea's Forgotten Prince on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Mass Mutual knows retirement can be an uncomfortable conversation. Who's the big boy?
You are.
Who's going to take care of us when we retire?
It's gonna be you.
You're going to make sure we don't end up in a retirement home.
Or if we do, it's a really nice one.
With tango lessons.
And bocce ball.
And a community pool. Oh. Talk to us about retirement today. Feel comfortable about tomorrow. Mass Mutual. Live Mutual.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents. And Doug.
Don't you just love the smell of old books?
Shh, this is a library.
Sorry, ma'am. We're looking for a book titled Liberty Mutual Customizes Your Car Insurance so you only pay for what you need.
I don't think we carry that, but check nonfiction.
He really does devour literature.
Please leave.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Okay, ladies, we all know one of the greatest feelings in the world when a friend says, "Girl, those pants look amazing on you." And I say, thanks. They're Skechers Go Walk Wear pants. And why do I always get compliments on these casual, athletic, stretchy pants? They're made with comfortable Go Flex fabric that has compression and hold. They have 4 pockets, plus they're machine washable and come in extended sizes. That's the Skechers Go Walk Wear line of pants. Find yours at Skechers.com, a Skechers store, and find retailers everywhere.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly on a day like today, Free for All Friday, where we are taking those comments and calls throughout the duration of the show. As we're now in the second hour here, we still got some more time to go. So if you're wanting to add your 2 cents, you can do so over on the social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Or if you're listening more traditionally, terrestrially in your car, if you can do so safely. Anyway, please be safe there on the roads. Don't need any more problems out there. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM is the number to call. Got a couple calls in the line here. We'll get some more of those as well. Plus, don't forget about those pound 250 calls. We'll take those a little bit later in the program as we do. It's the only kind of guaranteed foot in the door situation. We take those towards the end of the program. So just a reminder there, you dial pound 250 on your cell phone. Call it like it was a number. All 4 of those symbols, pound 250 or hashtag 250 if you prefer. Dial it like it was an actual number because it will ring on a cell phone anyway. And then when you're prompted, you hear the other guys talk about it as well, even in their commercials. Say the keyword Talk El Paso. When prompted, you can leave us a message day or night. Got at least one of those. All the comments always lighting up here. Lorenzo Colon, among other things, asking me, what sources do you recommend for us to follow? How much time you got and what subject are you on specifically? I follow a whole lot of sources here. I mean, the whole concept of open source intelligence gathering has seen a flourishing in the 21st century. And there are books out there that you can get to get more specific information, but I follow a little bit of everything just this side of the dark web, just because getting into that is its own whole kerfuffle and reality fades away here. But, I mean, some of the publications that I look at more often than not, Texas Tribune is a good one in our area. Of course, El Paso Inc. and some of our news partners, including the El Paso Herald Post and such. Always just good to keep kind of baselines for yourself. Internationally, I do like The Economist for some of their analysis, but then also like the Epoch Times. I mean, there's a ton out here. You're frankly going to have to get more specific before I can give you any real recommendations on what to be looking at and who. I mean, even people I've just had personal conversations with. Michael Yan, a gentleman who has done some very interesting East Asian and conflict reporting in Afghanistan and others. There's so much out there. That's the way I think about it sometimes is that while we were all waiting for 1984 to happen, Brave New World happened, by which I mean that we were all waiting for there to be control in information and lockdown. You can only know certain things, which may or may not be happening in certain spheres. But in the meantime, Brave New World, where there's so much information out there that it's hard to parse out noise to signal, is a little bit closer to where I think we have ended up as a society, which is why we do what we do and try to focus in on the important things. But we do open it up, of course, here as we do today. So the number to call again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Oh, so many. Jeez. Comments are always going apace here. But let's get to those calls. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. What's on your mind?
That gentleman was asking who's on the Democratic side that they vote for Hillary. Now, the first thing that came to my mind was the Benghazi disaster when Ambassador Stevens and several other gentlemen died. And before the Senate committee meeting, she said, "What difference does it make now?" It's like their deaths didn't matter. So, and if anybody's thinking of voting for her, they don't know her history. And then she called 75 million people a basket of deplorables, so I certainly wouldn't be putting a check mark next to her name. But I was going to talk about President Biden. You know, I could not even sit through his Tuesday State of the Union address. I just didn't have the desire, and I didn't have the spirit to listen to him. And I was at the polls. I was an election judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall, if you'll remember, in May, I was an election judge, and I said we had 195 people come in throughout the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this time we had 267 people, so we had quite a few people come in groups at specific times. It was a very grueling day from 6 in the morning till 9 in the evening. And I tell you what, they need to do more maintenance on the machines. I had trouble all day long. I had to close 2 express voting machines. And then the DS-200, where you put in your paper ballot, took one and it ate it. It just was there. And while I was on the phone with the county, the gentleman got so exasperated. You know what he actually did? He took the lid off the machine and pulled his ballot out and put it back in. I mean, people were getting frustrated, waiting and seeing how many problems I was having on the machines, and I have no control. Yeah. I mean, I know what a full shutdown is, but you don't want to take it upon yourself and take responsibility for doing a shutdown without somebody giving you approval. And then I call the county and they say, well, somebody will be there. I waited till 7 in the morning when we had problems with one of the machines. I was on my knees, actually, and I had people waiting to come in. Finally got that resolved. Nobody came to help throughout the whole day. So please, if you're not going to send someone to the polls, don't tell people you are, because then we have the expectation that one's going to get fixed, and it didn't happen. But getting back to Biden and our oil, I mean, it's just amazing that they are close to signing, JCPOA 0.2? And who is the mediator there? Russia. And what is Russia doing? Invading Ukraine. And what are we doing? Buying Russia 670,000 gallons per day from Russia. And people say, well, that's only, Jen Psaki says, well, it's only 10% of our oil. Well, that's $75 million a day that we're sending to Russia to help them invade Ukraine. That is just ludicrous. And now Russia's sitting at the table with the Iranians and the United States, and the U.S. is going to be buying now oil from Iran too. Why doesn't he just let our oil and gas industry in Texas and Oklahoma and other states that are capable of ramping up produce the oil we need? My husband went to town at 12 yesterday, noticed the gas was at $3.39. 3 hours later, when he filled up, it was $3.89.
Yep.
50 cents in 3 hours. And Biden says we're going to keep getting it from Iran and from Russia. This administration is, they are steadfast in destroying our country, because these prices are just going to go up and up. And he's just, climate change, and we're imploding, and he's fine with it. It's just depressing anymore to hear anything about the president. And I'm glad, getting back to El Paso, I'm all over the place today. I'm glad that there's going to be several runoffs in the Republican and the Democratic side.
Yep, across the board.
Yes. And I was glad to hear that the Rio Grande Valley, there were more people there was one county there that was 1,100% more than the midterm last year. And they were Hispanics coming out to vote Republican. I have a gentleman working here, and he saw a sign I have in my yard, and he came in and he said, I like your sign. I said, thanks. And we got to talking. His whole family voted for Trump first and second time. They were Democrats. So this idea that people aren't listening and people aren't paying attention is just not true. Even in El Paso, people are paying attention. I was very disappointed that Veronica got 88%, but it is what it is, right? So we still have a battle. I'm still asking everybody to go vote for Irene Armendariz Jackson on the Republican side in the general election for U.S. House of Representatives District 16. So I guess those are the comments I wanted to make today. But we need to get rid of this president. And Kamala, did you hear her explanation of tell the world, of those who aren't really know the what's going on in Ukraine, what's happening?
Yep.
And she describes Russia as a big country.
Big country versus little country. Yeah, I've heard that go by, and yeah, the best I can say is, sure, it's technically correct, but I'd hope for just the slightest higher level of discourse coming from, I don't know, the Vice President of the United States. Yeah.
And now she's on her way to Poland. Well, I wonder what she's going to tell them. I don't know. If it wasn't so grave what they're doing, it'd be comical.
I felt that about a lot of issues over the past couple of years here. What I will say is I'm not sure I'm going to go quite as far to say that there is an active interest in destroying the country. I know there's plenty out there saying that, but that I will say that hindsight is 20/20, and just like the snake you just passed, it's going to bite you on the butt if you are looking at only ideology and not like reality. So yeah, when we're talking about the issues that come along with, strategic supply, strategic reserves, and the ability to have domestic production in the face of essentially a breakdown of the global trade order that has existed essentially since World War II and certainly accelerated since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. You're looking at that being upended, which was not exactly a surprise this year. I mean, the final fact that the crazy SOB decided to move forward with it, I mean, could anyone have really put money on that? Maybe, but the idea that you're going to be looking at these things and, all these issues happen in a vacuum and are not going to be connected to each other is, well, we're reaping the benefit of that, and we're probably going to continue to do that as we see whatever the hell oil prices, all the supply that comes from it, goes into over the next weeks, months, hopefully not years, but I'm not in the habit of holding my breath on those kind of hopes much lately myself.
Well, Brent, I mean, Andrew, I'm not saying that they're intentionally doing it. I think maybe it's a lot of ignorance and ideology. So they're just looking through a tunnel vision and don't see the repercussions down the road, which is not a very good way to run a country. So that's what I'm saying is just ignorance is leading them, in my opinion. Not so much that it's unintentional, but sometimes when you're just ignorant, you choose that. And I think that's what, in my opinion, what this administration is doing. They just have ignorance on the policies that they're working on, which is going to lead to the implosion of the United States if it's not corrected.
Well,
and I'm hoping the pressure from the Congress and the Americans to start up our oil and drilling and fracking, maybe that'll make a difference, and Biden will, dream one night that we're right and he's wrong. So I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
No, I appreciate the point of the call there. I do appreciate it because, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, that is, I think, the only way we're going to get out of this in any kind of term, but short term is right out as far as I can consider it here because it takes time to get these things going, get the production, the supply, the people on board. I mean, I've been talking about the hiring fairs are going to be going on even within the region here. I expect that, particularly if we start seeing those oil prices jump up to some of the predictions that are coming along with it, see even more activity there. But, well, that's a whole nother subject here. We got to take that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we will get to more calls on the line. So if you're on the line, stay there for just a second. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso. The number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
I'm Justin Cree with your CBS 4 News Update. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham visited Las Cruces yesterday with the promise of more money for those affected by the La Union floods. $1.5 million in state emergency funding will go to Doñana County to complete the purchase agreement with the most dramatically affected families in La Union. Another $3.4 million will go towards the Gardner Dam, not the Alvarez Dam. That was the cause of the current flood problems. The governor's visit gave some people relief knowing more help is on the way, with other residents were left unsatisfied. The El Paso Fire Training Academy is preparing its newest class of cadets. Men and women from Class 100 trained both physically and mentally to become firefighters. After 7 months of training, the cadets will graduate and work alongside veteran firefighters. The Academy's next class of cadets is now open and taking applications. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
We've got a big problem on the 10 westbound this afternoon. I-10 westbound at Los Mochis, it's closed due to a collision. Now 10 eastbound at Los Mochis is also currently closed. Earlier, the left lane was blocked, but it looks like they've just shut down 10 eastbound as well. All traffic's being forced to exit at Vinton. And if you're coming from the westbound side, you're being forced to exit at Trans Mountain. That's traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. The first of a series of systems has come through for your Friday, giving us some fairly gusty winds and some patchy blowing dust. Now, Saturday's winds will still be windy, just not as strong, but without the rain, we'll continue to see some of that wind lift the dust. So more patchy blowing dust remains in the forecast your Saturday, with another system coming in on Sunday, bringing back even stronger winds and more dust.
This report is sponsored by Compassion International.
Haiti was already the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, but earthquakes, hurricanes, and COVID have made life even more difficult for families. You can help rebuild Haiti with Compassion International by texting the word radio to 97646.
Give a gift that speaks from the heart with a personalized engraving from Patriot Engraving. You care about where you shop, so order from Patriot Engraving. It's owned and operated by a man with autism. Patriot Engraving uses modern technology to deliver wood and metal engravings with the level of quality our grandparents knew. Share your value. Share your heart with Patriot Engraving, where every item is made as if you're part of the family. Learn more and order at patriotengravingks.com. That's patriotengravingks.com.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Monica Cortez. What motivates me? A lot of people depend on me, and I want to do my job right to be able to protect my community and give them what they need to better prepare for their day. I guess I just want to tell people who have been following me, who have been watching KTSM and seeing me grow in this career. Thank you. You know, it means a lot to see you appreciate what I do. I'm going to make sure I put out the best forecast I can because I do care about you. I care about El Paso. So thank you.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique, but you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This report is sponsored by Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Your host, Andrew J. Polk, here. Coming around the bend towards the last part of our last hour here. Still got some time to take some calls on the line. So if you're wanting to call in that way, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of conversation going on here. Catherine Cordry letting us know over on the YouTube that $70 to fill her tank today. Woof. Again, recommend doing a half fill, though. That in this kind of current situation might just... delay the pain, but at least you got the supply going along with it. Al George bringing up on some of these propositions, saying, why did Abbott drop his moronic trans idea right before the election? Is he trying to get Robert O'Rourke elected? I mean, we've seen a lot of questionable to their own base and even the opposition kind of attitudes happen right ahead of these primary elections and coming into the November elections, of course, here with the midterms. So, I mean, I think there's some political calculus at way, but whether you think it'll be effective or not, that's a question for yourself as he's bringing it up here. So a lot more conversation going on here. Catherine Codry, RJ, and more chiming in over there. Lorenzo Colon. Raul actually commenting that he would, saying any Democrat would be better than Trump or any other GOPer. Vote for Biden for re-election. Have never voted for the Clintons. Way too corporate for me. Again, if you want to, it often takes on its own tenor and conversation over there in the comments. So if you're wanting to chime in or tune in over there, more than welcome to. But let's get to more of those calls on the line here. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do have Harry the Horse on the line with us right now. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Open Line Friday. This is a great deal. It reminds me of other famous radio shows. Mm-hmm. By the way, I make general comments. And I'm very polite about it. That lady that was before me, very brilliant, very bright lady, has some very good points and very succinctly expresses herself. I'd like to just throw out a little bit of history here,
Sure.
Andrew. As it is now established, crossing into the United States from Mexico puts you in the United States of America. I think sometimes we forget that, but I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Also, disliking or hatred of a politician is nothing new. There's nothing new about that. However, when the hatred fogs your brain, not to be able to distinguish the hatred from the good of the country that has happened previously as compared to what is happening now, in my opinion, needs help. And the Yellow Pages has got a lot of places you can go to get help. But I just wanted to make that comment, and I love listening to the callers' comments. I really do. You learn a lot. And also, I would just like to plug Sunland Park Racetrack. We got to support that. It's across the river, as we know, and everything is open. And Saturday is money day, Andrew. For anybody that plays the horses, Saturday is the money day.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I think that there's a serious interest in people getting out and doing things. I mean, we had kind of that conversation earlier this week about bars and noise ordinances, but it just feels like people want to get out and do things, even just in some of the stuff we've been doing with our own station here. Not exactly a plug, but I'll be out with the essential food sales meat trucks over this week, and you may have been hearing those going by on some of our air. I'll be out with one of those in support of that, and they've been a pretty big response to it of people wanting to get out, want to get stuff, get deals, and then do stuff and like grow with their families and that kind of a thing. We'll get to a lot more of that here. So thank you for the point in the call. I do appreciate it because there's a lot to do and a whole lot of things I think people want to get to here. All right, trying to squeeze in a couple more calls here before we hit that next break. We do have David on the east side here with us right now. David, thanks for joining us.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, to hear you just fine. What's on your mind?
Okay, great. This is actually a challenge to all El Paso voters, and you need to vote issues, not party. Now, generally speaking, and issues and policies align in many cases with the party. Okay, but the bottom line is this, and this pertains to El Paso. And let me caveat by saying I come from a family of Democrats. I'm the lone Republican in my family.
Okay.
So I understand. I think the mindset. The bottom line is this: we have a bunch of people in this town who are fairly conservative, but will not even consider a non-Democrat vote, even though the policies of the party, the Democrat Party, are actually deleterious to the United States. And it's time for people to wake up and see that. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. No, I mean, thinking about how people vote, I mean, we still have an issue of people actually going out and to vote. I am happy enough that we did beat the double-digit bar, very low bar, I had said, even if we've got a lot more to do. What Barbara had said about more people coming out, encouraging, but we still got a disconnect between the average El Paso would-be voter, potential voter, and actually going to the ballot box. But I've done many shows on that. More specifically, the way we talk about issues, there's a reason we do it the way we do, and we have our interviews, as we will again be having coming up next week with some of the other candidates or other nominees now, or those hoping to be on the ballot. Explain all what that means as we get into those interviews, because knowing what you're voting for, just looking for the D or the R or whatever letter or color you're looking for next to a candidate, sure, it's a shorthand, but I was actually pretty in favor of when Texas got rid of straight ticket voting, because it takes away the actual critical choice and thinking that should be going along with your voting experience. Now, I will freely admit I'm not always as much up on every single judgeship, every small party, every small office that you'd be hard pressed to even get me to be able to list them all. That's absolutely a factor, and I understand that, and election fatigue and everything goes with it. But seriously, looking at what candidates are talking about, what their goals are, sure, their values, they inform the decisions that they make on the day-to-day, but knowing exactly how they expect to put those into place, that's the rubber hitting the road moment that I look at most often out of all. Because if you're not actually saying, oh, sure, everything should be great. Yes, that is my party platform. My natural question, and everyone else's should be, cool, how are you actually going to do that, and what is that going to mean for us? That's almost the entire reason of existence, the way we do it on this show here. So I appreciate the point in the call. Hopefully more people are out there paying attention and considering these kind of things. We just got to get people out to the polls. Yes, I would love a perfectly well-informed voter base out there, but we got issues, and even just getting people in the habit of doing it, I see as a pretty basic step one here. Again, taking calls to the end of the hour. We got a lot of comments coming in here, but let's Ed Clore letting us know that he plays the ponies as well. Hey, just don't lose your shirt, even though if it is getting warmer out there. I think we have to squeeze in one more quick call before we hit that next break here. And the number to call is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
It's Jerry.
Hey there, Jerry. What's on your mind?
Hey, Andrew, I just want to clarify. Now, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV.
Sure.
But the propositions that they had up on the ballot for the Republican side, number 8, deals with all minor children for sex transition purposes. That's all it deals with. The children, minor children, not any criminals that want to get undone or whatever. It just deals with minor children that cannot make a reasonable decision for themselves. They're not even supposed to be given aspirin at school without parental consult, but you're having them being taken across lines, and they're given sex transformation surgeries and such, and things like chemical castration and such, which is wrong. So that deals with just minor children, nobody else.
Yeah, again, the subordinate clause there being to all the other ones there, that on all minor children for sex transition purposes. They're decently clear to me, but I can get why there might be some confusion out there, and the thorny issue at best here. But the issue you bring up there about then parental consent and information on it, that is one of the thornier aspects that I think we are seeing, well, the current Attorney General and Governor's administration get into here with the cases as they're going forward involving guardianship and who has the right. I mean, really, in my never having had to deal with this situation personally, anything involving the massive changing of the makeup of a person that is under 18 is problematic to me at best, because everything is still growing. Everything, it is just messy.
They're going to do a permanent fix on a temporary problem, because when you're young, they're going all the way down like 6 years old, kids in 5 and 6 years old. And when you're young like that, my son wanted to be a dog when he grew up, not, anything ever, he would run around playing doggy. So do I get him chemicals to make him a dog, or let him grow out of it? So
it's a thorny issue at best, and I kind of want to reach for my 10-foot pole here. But what I will say is this: that to my understanding of those that have in adults made their transitions or made their decisions along those lines, have been around 3 major factors: consistency and the ability. I mean, I'm not saying I'm totally correctly here, but essentially going beyond a whim here. And I think that there are considerations in each individual standpoint here. So I don't know. Some of the questions that have come up in the audience already here have been about why do this right before the election and before this, and just maybe opening up an avenue on the other side of the aisle if there's an attack on here. I don't know. I think there's a lot more debate and discussion to be had there, but thank you for the point in the call. Yeah, not a legal expert on it myself here, but that is my essential same reading for it there. All right, coming up here on the last break of the hour, we'll take another call or two if you want to squeeze in here. Otherwise, closing out those pound 250 calls, and we've got coming up here for the next week. Whole lot of stuff to cover here, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Reynolds, we have a crash blocking the right lane, causing slow traffic back to Geronimo. Beyond that, on the 10 westbound at Los Mochis, the freeway is closed due to a serious collision. All traffic is being forced to exit at Trans Mountain. 10 eastbound at Los Mochis also closed due to the same collision. All traffic's being forced to exit at Vinton. That's traffic.
This report is sponsored by the maker of NexGard Afoxolaner, the #1 choice of veterinarians.
NexGard Afoxolaner is monthly flea and tick protection that's #1 vet recommended and #1 dog preferred. Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurologic disorders. Ask your vet or visit nextguardfordogs.com to learn more.
The Ridiculous Crime Podcast proves that true crime isn't always about mayhem and murder. Sometimes it's just silly. Take a deep dive into the absurd side of criminality with tales of stupid capers and idiotic cons that are 99% murder-free and 100% ridiculous.
16-year-old Max Wade decides to steal the yellow and black Lamborghini Gallardo Spider. The owner? You know him as Guy Fieri.
Listen to Ridiculous Crime on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
There's no part of our bodies that put in more work than our feet. And with all that work, your feet can start to ache. But luckily, there's relief for our overworked feet. Skechers Arch Fit footwear for men and women. Skechers teamed up with podiatrists to design a shoe that provides total foot and arch support for all-day comfort. They used 20 years of data and over 120,000 unweighted foot scans to create a podiatrist-certified insole that distributes support across the arch no matter what foot type you have. And with all that support comes extreme comfort. Skechers are the fit and comfort specialists, and Arch Fit shoes from Skechers provide expert comfort whether walking or just standing. They're so comfortable, they're not just for people with tired, achy feet. Everybody can enjoy just how amazing they feel. Plus, many are machine washable. So even though you'll be wearing them all day, every day, you can easily keep them looking new. So give yourself some soothing comfort and support with podiatrist-certified Skechers Arch Fit footwear. Your overworked feet will thank you. See all the styles of Arch Fit footwear for men and women at Skechers.com, the Skechers store near you, or wherever stylish shoes are sold.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour, and always online at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, rounding the bend here on the end of our show here, just to talk to you about some of the things coming up here. As was mentioned, the El Paso History Radio Show airing tomorrow, 10 to noon, right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Will be focused on that little bit of history that was just featured on the History Channel when it comes to the Pancho Villa Stash House and such. So that'll be in here. Host Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent, also joined by Bernie Sargent and other representatives of some of those locations demonstrated in that show. They'll be here talking about that, so be sure to tune in for that. Otherwise, this program next week, some of the stuff we're working on for you include those interviews with those other now nominees or wanting to be on the ballot. At all confused about that, we're talking both about Irene Armendariz Jackson will be on the show, as well as Guadalupe Giner and that situation with the potential challenge for the county judgeship. Of course, all other things being equal, that election would be decided except for, well, this attempt. We'll get into all that and all those details there. So a lot of comments coming in here last minute, a lot of stuff that we'll absolutely have to get into here. Glenn Stewart making a comment, among others, that hearing quite a bit of sugar-coated disappointment with the Biden administration and the rest of his COVIDiots who are actually just using him to run Barry's third term. I mean, I was saying it ahead of the election that we weren't going to be seeing so much a new administration as a warmed over third term of the Obama administration. I think that has more or less held out, except with somehow less policy involved is what it kind of feels like, at least when it comes to border security and issues like that. I don't go quite as far as some of the others out there saying, calling for that it's essentially the destruction, but of issues that go into all of this. But we'll have to get into that in the future shows here. As promised, we also do have those pound 250 calls. Again, if you're wanting to leave us a message while we're off air over this weekend, pressing, comment, thought, whatever have you, you can leave it by dialing pound 250 on your cell phone, saying the keyword Talk El Paso, and then leaving us a message much like this.
This is Messiah Frankie. What was that mush? Right after my comment that you played,
this next guy comes on, and his response to me, Frank, by the way, I'm Frankie, Messiah Frankie, not Frank. He says Hillary Rodham Clinton. What the heck is that supposed to mean? Is that his response? Oh, really? Great thinker, you bozo. That's the only thing you could come up with is Hillary Rodham Clinton. And she's not a tyrant, by the way. She's not a dictator. She's not a queen. She's not a whatever the heck it is, you moron jerk.
That ongoing conversation there, apparently, about the nature of tyrants and what political persuasion they agree to or adhere to. My contention being that tyranny and the abuse of power knows no party. I mean, heck, if you want to truly have the definition about if there has been a liberal tyrant, I mean, it seemed to only be using it almost in the modern sense there, the idea that only someone who calls themselves a liberal in the modern sense of it. I mean, liberal hasn't even necessarily existed for beyond decades at this point. If you really want to track the traces of this throughout history, I think you'll find more than a couple there who would agree with an overall left persuasion and found themselves very much interested and ensconced in power, because another phrase I think about a lot there is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So anytime you end up with someone that is, very much involved and wanting to keep their power to the detriment of anything else, that's where you're going to end up, almost guaranteed. One last point I want to make here for this week is a lot of conversation coming up about, people who should have been prosecuted, should have been thrown in jail. Just the juxtaposition that we are seeing right now on that global stage between, of course, Ukraine, Russia, all the conflict and all of the impacts that come out of that here is I just want to point out that if you want to look at a nation where there are political opponents who end up getting locked up, you want to look at Russia directly. And while, sure, if someone has committed a crime, they should probably at the very least be investigated and looked at directly for it. I find the calls that come from both sides of the aisle on this point about, lock them up or throw them away the key, all that stuff to be firmly against the American system. Because, again, if someone has done something else, sure, do the prosecution, but the political motivation that comes along with it is exactly out of the playbook of Vladimir Putin and one thing I'm going to have, or just third world dictatorial countries in general. So we want to be talking about those impacts and what that means for the future of our country. Open political discourse, being able to run, being able to make your case in the public square is how this has worked, and I think how the only way we're going to be able to get through this in any sense of the word. And that's what we'll keep doing 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday here on News Radio 690 KTSM. So we will have to leave it there for this week. I do want to thank everyone who did tune in, comment, call in, participate in the show. You all are really what helped make this what it is as we continue our mission to have live local talk radio in the borderland. So stay tuned out there, stay safe, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great weekend, all. We'll see you all next week.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Reynolds, we have a crash blocking the right lane, causing slow traffic back to Geronimo. Beyond that, on the 10 westbound at Los Mochis, the freeway is closed due to a serious collision. All traffic is being forced to exit at Trans Mountain. 10 eastbound at Los Mochis also closed due to the same collision. All traffic's being forced to exit at Vinton. That's traffic.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Titans go! When the Teen Titans go to the movies, they know the best way to travel is safely.
Hollywood, here we come!
And you know it's super. To keep your child safe, be sure to use the right car seat for their age and size.
Exactly. We're finally on the big screen.